So the Oscars happened and Sinners lost. Predictable outcome. Big up PTA. But Michael B. Jordan won Best Actor. That was a nice surprise. Rest in peace to the Now that the rap party for 2025's filmography has concluded, it's time to head into the new year with hopeful expectations that AI will stay away as much as possible from this art form, because we keep on witnessing what pure human artistry can achieve when people from various backgrounds get together in order to make some sense out of this bleak yet beautiful world. Yeah, this take is truly wholesome and optimistic, but it's truly out of place in the introduction of a video about a film that, despite not using AI, still made me feel soulless and ruined my entire week. But somehow I loved it so much, I decided to sit down and disassemble the entire movie in order to figure out what exactly makes it a masterpiece. 2026 is already keeping me entertained with plenty of games, shows and anime, so that's why I'm taking a trip down memory lane in the Criterion closet and step back into 2018. Let's talk about Climax. The first and probably the only thing that you need to know about this movie before heading into it is that it's French, and if that didn't sound scary enough, there are like 20 French people on screen for the majority of the runtime. If this film wasn't already based on a true story, this setting would have worked perfectly as the most convincing backdrop for the nightmare that occurred, because these vile things can only and should only happen to the French. Okay, stop the bit. French jokes might have become too cliché, and I apologize. Let's take it back to the beginning and give credit where credit is due. Climax is a French horror movie that mainly focuses on D&D, but not the introverted type of D&D, I'm talking about dance and drugs. Gaspar Noé had to perform a Herculean task when casting the ensemble at the center of this film, because not only did he need to find 20 talented dancers that could also act their asses off, but every single one of them had to fit into a specific carefully crafted mold. And France might have been the only place on earth able to fully bring his vision to life, as the country is famous for concentrating the highest amount of talent per capita. Even if the focus of the chaos revolves around the core group of faces, all of these people utilize the most out of their 15 minutes of fame, because even if they have a small screen presence or less than 10 lines of dialogue, everybody made sure that their screen time is used to bring out their raw energy and emotions. We're introduced to these people in the beginning of the movie, as we take a look at their audition tapes. Each and every one of them takes center stage for a couple of minutes and gives us a brief glimpse into their psyche. They talk about their love for dance, their biggest fears, and their goals and aspirations, and we get a sense of their background as well as where they might end up in life. These are not grounded, stable, innocent, normal people. These are extroverts. No, but for real, this segment might fool you into thinking that this is the character spreadsheet, but it's not, because half of the film's runtime is actually used to build up the personalities of these characters. This is just that casual moment in the beginning of a horror movie when the main group takes a photo together that foreshadows a horrifying turn of events. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. After all, half of this film is a gradual build-up and we're not even finished with the introduction. So let's not waste any more time yapping and just dance, 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 dance. Even if you're French, unless you're a dancer, this will be a foreign film to you, because the main language that is spoken throughout the entire experience is dance, and it is used perfectly to capture pure bliss as well as existential dread. If a movie centered around music is called a musical, what is the equivalent for dance? Because this film is that exact thing. The dialogue here does half the work that the dance sequences do when it comes to bringing these characters to life and their personalities to the surface. If the videotapes showed us only a fraction of who we're dealing with, the beautifully executed opening choreography puts the full picture on display. This scene manages to combine all walks of life into a messy yet cohesive group expression of self. Everybody has the time to shine now, and not only that, everybody can now show who they really are. You can rewatch this scene alone 100 times and the choreography will still find new ways to pull you in, because there is just too much going on at the same time and you don't know anywhere to look. All characters convey their personality through their distinct dance style, and you can finally see clearly how fucked up these people are, but in a beautiful way. You can tell who's aggressive and who's flamboyant, who's submissive and who's dominant. You can literally see them competing to be the center of attention and who's willing to give out the most in order to get there. At first, everyone seems to be clashing into each other, but when you look at the bigger picture, the entire experience flows so much smoother. It's controlled chaos waiting to burst as a 5-minute sequence struggles to contain the talent of 20 explosive individuals, but each member of the band plays a key role in maintaining the balance of the entire structure as they channel their characteristic intensity into becoming a single unit. Everyone just melts into one another, forming a colorful puzzle, which cannot be complete if you remove even one piece. Bruh, this movie got me speaking like I'm a dance connoisseur who's so deep into this art form that they can feel confident critiquing it. Shout out Mihai Petre, shout out Dansez pentru tine. The cherry on top of this drawn out dance sequence is the music, which keeps the energy going, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of techno, I was still too invested into the entire performance not to vibe along. It's this scene in particular that got me baffled about how well put together this ensemble actually is, because literally everyone kills it. Brother, these talented people convey so much artistry through their dance skills that it completely obstructs the tragedy beneath the surface of these characters, because as soon as they start speaking again, you're reminded that you might have to be a little dodgy to find yourself in a situation like this. The exposition is still ongoing. The sangria has entered the room. The following part of the film pans out as the prelude to the incoming doom that has been set in motion, and the veil that covered the troubled nature of these characters finally falls to the ground. We can now analyze these people through a smaller lens. There is plenty of tension of all sorts amongst all members of the band. Dance was what kept them together, because separated, they seem truly disconnected from one another. Superficial cravings of the soul and mind are what's keeping these fractured individuals immersed in the illusion of a group. These people are dysfunctional co-workers. They talk shit and fantasize about doing the worst things to each other, but yet somehow they also seek solace in the comfort of their mutual experience. The editing frames this entire portion like a reality show, highlighting the different dynamics within the group. On a micro level, these people seem like they have nothing in common, apart from dancing, as they fill up the air with meaningless social interaction, trying to uncover a semblance of unity. And just like a reality show, this portion perfectly illustrates how extroverted people are truly the loneliest individuals, as they lack a true sense of self. Introvert propaganda. Maybe these people truly don't care about each other, or maybe it's the sangria starting to creep in. But drama is constantly being funneled through the entire dialogue, and you start seeing how everyone wears their entitlement on their sleeves, as they are constantly demanding what they think they deserve. Main faces start emerging from the blur, presenting themselves as anchors to ground the focus within the chaos, and before you're allowed to get invested into their personal conflicts, you're thrown into the middle of the circle. It's time to dance. This is the peak of the movie for me, and it's not even the halfway mark. Everything is about to fall down, but before you can crash into the ground, you have to rise up to the sky first. This scene symbolizes the come up, metaphorically and literally. You're immediately pulled into an almost 10-minute avalanche of unfiltered talent, and this time I'm not just referring to the dancing. The cinematography is genius, as it places the point of view above the group, stripping away their facial features and compressing all of their identities into their dance. No more faces, just a bunch of demons dancing in a circle of fire, descending further and further into hell. It's a trip down on a scary path, but it also conveys a beautiful and blissful feeling because once you get grabbed by the music, then you are immediately hypnotized through this ritualistic expression of self. The framing of this sequence feels more intimate because everyone is given their proper time in the spotlight and you get to witness their raw energy being put on display. This is what you get when you put a bunch of aura farmers in a room and you give them acid. A never-ending sequence of unhinged desires and true identities slowly being brought to the surface. Now, if you've ever had the pleasure or the displeasure to experience the effects of psychedelic substances, you can probably attest that these compounds, although they make you trip fucking balls, they also uncover an authentic part of yourself, just like dancing does. This is the scene you need to study in order to better understand these characters, because as the intensity rises, more and more layers are being shed and everything builds up towards the moment when you get to finally see the real faces of these people, when the dancing stops and the sangria kicks in. This is the climax. Now, the responsible thing would be to end the video right here in order to preserve the actual substance of the film, because the second half is what constitutes as the one of the most memorable experience you can have watching a movie, and I want people to get out their comfort zone and support unique visions. But at the same time, I want to put everything on the floor in order to deter you from ruining your day, your week, or your life, because Climax also happens to be one of the most miserable experiences I've ever had the displeasure to willingly participate in. If the first half of the movie showcases pure artistry and creative self-expression, the latter exposes the bad parts of the human mind, unlocking their limitless potential. The group has been simmering under a copious amount of pressure, and the lid is finally about to pop off. If you are a masochist or a freak, or if your curiosity knows no bounds, you can click off the video right now, because I will spoil the chaotic events that make Climax a truly unwatchable experience in order to do a proper analysis, and also save the viewers with self-preservation skills from partaking in nothing but pain and misery for the sake of art. That's my job, but I don't get paid for it, so I think this might be an internship. Anyway, I would rather waste my life on that rather than spend even a minute in that room surrounded by those people. I don't think it's a spoiler that the main plot is centered around the bad acid trip gone way off the rails, because every element of the film frames it like that, from the dance sequences and the dialogue to the intentional cinematography placing the fucking sangria straight up in your face, so you're always on the edge, expecting shit to hit the fan. The entire film is literally structured to mimic a psychedelic trip, and the coming up stage ends at the halfway mark, as everyone starts to notice an obvious shift in the energy within the room, and that's how the movie leads you into a false sense of security. You've been anxiously waiting for the gates of hell to open, and when this girl starts peeing herself without a care in the world, you exhale because you think you've just emerged on the other side with only minor turbulences. But then the movie immediately pulls the rug from under your feet as everyone goes insane, throwing accusations upon the only sober guy in the room until they finally throw him outside so he can freeze to death. Don't worry, it gets worse rapidly. Then the kid shows up out of nowhere and drinks the sangria, and if that wasn't bad enough, his mom locks him in the electrical closet to keep him safe. You are now witnessing and probably experiencing mass psychosis. This rapid succession of horrifying events is shorter than any of the dance sequences, contrasting the time dilation. If the film started out by allowing you to savor its carefully curated artistry, well, now you have no time to process everything that's going on. From this point forward, there are no breaks. If you've taken psychedelics before, you know that the peak slowly creeps upon you, but there is no smooth transition here, as the climax closely resembles a violent crash. All of the drama that was quietly festering in the background has just accumulated all of the steam that it needs to erupt. These people are finally treating each other how they've always wanted to, and nobody is safe. The gorgeous cinematography gets ambitious and grounds all of the chaos in a continuous shot that follows the main faces we were introduced to earlier, and the lack of cuts mimics the unescapable nature of this situation. There is no blinking and missing stuff. There is no going to sleep. You cannot ignore what's going on, and you cannot control it either. You can only slip through various cracks in order to find the semblance of what you can foolishly call safety. But the madness is going to follow you at all times. Even if you escape the loud music and the bombardment of bone-chilling screams, the violence will find you and your unborn children. This is not hell, because even the most innocent people cannot escape the torment that's been unleashed. This is purgatory, and everyone's going through their intrinsic motions in order to cope. Some people are still dancing, whilst others are fighting or even having sex. They set each other on fire and they self-mutilate, all whilst the screaming coming from the kids stuck in the power room gets louder and louder, until screaming becomes the entire focal point of the action. When these characters finally reach the point of self-awareness and realize the gravity of their situation, they cannot contain the horror they're experiencing anymore, so they just let it all out. These blood-curdling screams might overshadow the dialogue when calculating the minutes spent on highlighting these elements of the film, and this is the exact reason why this film is practically unwatchable. There is no enjoyment to be found in watching these people act like they've been possessed, and I don't want to use the most basic argument people use against metal, but the intensive yelling and hollering takes away the ability to appreciate the themes and messages that the film is trying to convey. And there's no catchy tune to distract you from this insanity, as the screaming overpowers any other source of possible relief, and the chaos doesn't show any sign of stopping or slowing down. This is the moment when the cracks become more apparent and you start to realize that finishing a movie is strictly optional, especially when it's not fun anymore, because what's the point in wasting 90 minutes if the experience leaves you completely drained instead of giving you a good time? Imagine a regular person winding down after a long day of work with this abomination. You want to forget about your real life problems and you're faced with nothing but uncontrollable shouting and the camera movement that's going to give you motion sickness. But the thing is, everything is intentional. I'm being very negative, but there's practically nothing bad about this movie. Gaspar Noé utilized every tool at his disposal to convey pure dread through his art, and he did it perfectly. Every structural element works in tandem to build up the tension and to release it in the most terrifying way, transforming the entire film into a philosophical debate regarding the point of art. Is art supposed to make you feel good, or is it just supposed to make you feel something? Because if that's the case, how can you call movies art? You're spending your hard-earned cash to go to the cinema, so how would it be acceptable for a film to take your money and make you feel worse? Because everything is so subjective, it's hard to find an unbiased answer to all of these questions, and I respect Climax because it doesn't even try to answer them. This is an authentic vision that's unapologetic for the feelings that it's trying to awaken within the viewer, because it is not afraid to go as far as possible to achieve this. Turns out that the screaming was not that bad, because the most uncomfortable part of the entire film is dead quiet, and that's when the lights go out. You know what just happened. The characters are pointing out what just happened, and they're just laughing. But I've never had less fun with a movie. You don't need me to spell it out for you. The worst thing that could have happened, happened, and there's nothing you can do about it besides staring into the ominous red light that takes over the entire room that has gone completely silent. There are no more innocent people suffering. Now we're in hell. Nothing can save these people anymore. The final stretch of the film makes an attempt at creating some sort of closure by bringing back a semblance of unity, and even though the encounter stays surface level, being mostly sexual and clearly fueled by the acid, you finally feel some sort of compassion for these lonely people trying desperately to grab a hold of anything that resembles a possible connection and a way out of this nightmare. But that doesn't last long, and as soon as this moment is interrupted, every last bit of optimism gets packed up and thrown right back into hell for one final ride. The camera twists and turns, mirroring the ocean of bodies that's been piling on the floor. The lighting paints the entire set as demonic, highlighting these tortured souls finally getting what they deserve. Their souls have been harvested and the ritual is finally complete. The climax has ended and we're coming down. As morning light bursts into the room, so do a bunch of firemen that discover the horrific aftermath. You can finally comprehend the gravity of the entire experience and how far it has gone. Bodies, bodies, bodies. Different movie. Everybody is a casualty, and not just the people who have actually lost their life. And all of this was avoidable. What lessons can you even extract from the whole ordeal? Does it say anything about human nature? Does it explore a psyche being pushed to its absolute breaking point? Does it give art a sense of meaning? Was everything just a bad trip and I'm asking too many questions because I'm still coming down and I can't process everything that I've just witnessed? I don't have an answer to these questions. Matter of fact, I don't have any answers, but I have even more questions to ask. And because I'm saying this, I think that Climax was able to achieve what it set out to do. This film constantly overstimulates you by throwing puzzle pieces at your face, leaving you with the task of putting them all together. Its only concern is to facilitate the most uncomfortable environment that's going to make your job as hard as possible. I think I love this movie, but I kinda want to stay away from it at the same time. Even rewatching bits and pieces for this video was painful, and it's frustrating because there is just so much interesting stuff to analyze crammed into this thing. Every character's point of view tells a completely different story, and you can make a comprehensive deep dive on like 10 of them, because these are truly complex individuals. The cinematography alone deserves to be picked apart bit by bit in order to figure out how these people were able to reach flow state and capture the pure essence of chaos. I've spoiled the majority of pivotal moments and I try to be as pretentiously profound as possible, but I think I've still only covered the tip of the iceberg, as there are even more themes I didn't even touch upon, like incest or racism. Climax has a whole lot of substance that immaculately captures the best and the worst of what humanity has to offer. This film does its job too well because it prioritizes art over enjoyment. Therefore, I don't want to stop talking about it, but I also don't want to recommend it to anyone. It's an unwatchable masterpiece. This movie also perfectly captures the essence of psychedelics, because depending on what type of person you are, watching this film will either be an ethereal experience or the worst trip of your life. Watch at your own discretion. I hope my video prepared you for it. And if you've already watched the film, please start a discussion thread in the comments, I beg you. I'm just itching to talk more about this movie. Who do you think did it? Who spiked the sangria? I mean, the film gives us a big hint that might just be the answer. Biggest spoilers yet, as we literally see Psyche taking acid and she was the only person that kept dancing until the very end. And no one decided to question her out of all people, but it's her audition tape in the beginning of the film that's throwing me off, because she mentions how she's scared of acid because her roommate took eye drops and it got too far. And she's the one that's taking the same eye drops in the final shot of the film. Was she projecting, or did she just succumb to the face she was most terrified of? Let me know what you think, and feel free to point out any other interesting details that the rest of us might have missed. Thank you for dropping by on this special occasion. Your presence has diluted the misery this film put me through. Take care.